Okay, so this is the architecture of Linux. So the basic part is hardware. The underneath layer, the first layer is hardware. Hardware in the sense it let us think about it as a server. When you say server, it's like there are hardware vendors who manufacture servers and who sell servers. So that server has a processor, RAM, it has hard disk, it has a lot of external hard disks, it has the adapters, the fiber channel adapters to connect to the storage, it has Ethernet adapters to connect to the network, right? So when you think server as a server in the data center. There are a lot of racks. There are very big servers, so it's huge capacity. The RAM in terms of TBs, 1 TB of RAM and 1000 TB of hard disk, and 64-way processor, 64 CPU, and it has very high processing. In Ethernet cards, and it also has the fiber channel cards. Those are for connecting to the storage. So basically in a typical data center environment you have all these things, right? So you have a lot of servers connected, there is a power supply, there is AC, and a lot of servers. So in the server, in the sense, it has RAM, it has CPU, it has hard disk, it has storage, everything connected, right? So this is the hardware. On top of that we have something called kernel. So this is the main component of Linux. This is responsible for hardware management, right? So kernel also does a lot of other things like memory management, CPU management, process management and all. But right now, for now, we think kernel as something, a software component which does the hardware management. So mostly written in C, and this is the essential part of Linux. So this does the hardware management. So there are many layers in the operating system. On top of hardware, we have something called kernel, which is responsible for the hardware management. Let us say we just plug in a USB to your Windows laptop. So what happens? For the first time, it detects that there is an external drive attached to the laptop. Then it installs some device drivers if they are not installed already. Then if after it installed, it shows in the this thing, right, in the My Computer. So what is happening internally when you plug in a USB drive to a laptop, it is actually detecting, right? So that is actually the kernel which is responsible for that. And when you remove that USB from the laptop, it immediately detects that there is a hardware removed. So I mean, it's for anything. You detect, you attach a mouse, you attach a monitor. Everything is actually done by the kernel. Kernel is responsible for the hardware management. Any hardware device added, any hardware device removed, it is the kernel's responsibility to detect. Okay. So this is mostly written in C and C++. This is also a set of software which is mainly responsible for device management or hardware management. Okay. Then this is the hardware. This is kernel. Then this is the next part is shell. Shell is the one where actually user interacts with the machine, right? So something like in case of Linux, we have CLI, in the sense we type the commands. So whereas in case of Windows, what is the shell? So basically the icons are there, right? So these are the icons which we interact. These are actually shell in case of Windows, right? So in case of Linux, the shell is a terminal, or Linux also has a graphical user interface, but when we talk about the servers, we mostly use shell, right? So basically there user interacts with the machine, right? So let us say I want to I want to instruct a machine to do something, right? So that I type a command on the shell. Shell talks to the kernel, and kernel talks to the hardware. So that is how we get the work done. So we basically instruct the machine to perform something through the kernel, and the user interacts with the machine directly using shell, right? Then on top of that, we have several commands, utilities, applications which can be installed on top of the operating system, on top of the shell. So this is essentially the Linux operating system, right? So we have hardware, we have kernel, we have shell, then we have other applications, commands and all, right? So this is the hardware, which is basically the server hardware. And then on top of that, kernel is there. Kernel is responsible for the device management. It also does memory management, process management, CPU management. Then we have shell. Shell is actually the interface between the user and the kernel. Kernel is the interface between the shell and the hardware, right? And then we have commands, utilities and applications which are running on top of the shell. So this is basically the Linux architecture. Okay. It is not the device that was responsible to talk to kernel and detect the new hardware. It is the kernel which is responsible for detecting the new hardware. Yes, kernel is the one which is responsible for detecting the new hardware. You insert any device, it's the kernel. In case of Linux or Windows also, kernel detects the new hardware and reports. Okay. Okay, so basically let us see directory structure in Linux. Okay, so in Windows, what is the directory structure? We have something like C drive. Under that, we have different folders. So basically, we have something like My Documents. We have something called, right? We have something called, let us say, just for example, pictures. We have downloads, right? We have something called desktop. So these are the different folder structure. A folder is called directory in Linux. Folder is nothing but a collection of files, right? So this is then we have something like D drive, then you have E drive, etc. Right? So these are basically for our convention, right? So generally it is not a rule like you have to store all your documents in My Documents only, but generally we follow convention, right? It's basically for our usability, right? In the same way, Linux also has a directory structure. So like how this C, let us say my computer, we call it, right? This is the highest point. From that we have C, and from that we have D, and from that we have E, right? So my computer is the highest point from where we can traverse through different folders, right? In the same way, a folder is called a directory in case of Linux, right? So that is called slash, highest of everything. This is called root. Okay, then we have several directories in Linux, something like slash home, slash var, slash etc, slash temp, slash opt, slash lib, slash root, slash bin. So these are the different directories. I mean, there are a lot of directories available. So these are primarily the basic directories. What is home? This is the home directory of the user. Okay, so in the sense, so when you talk about Linux, it's mainly from the server perspective, right? When you have a server, there are multiple people working on it, and there will be a home directory for every user, right? Let us say there is a Linux box, Linux server, which is running in a data center, right? Then there are multiple people working on it. Let us say user 1, user 2, user 3. Okay, then when a user logs into the machine, he'll have his own home directory. What is it? Slash home user 1, for example. So generally home directories of the users will be in slash home. Okay, so slash home is the directory where home directories of the users will be present in general. I mean, it's not a rule like we need to create in slash home only, but in generally we create the home directories of the users in slash home, right? So when you talk about Linux is mostly a server operating system. In server, there will be multiple people working on it, right? So when multiple people working on it, everybody will have their own files, right? So everybody will have their own set of directories. So those generally they store in their home directory, and when the user logs in into the machine, by default he will be in his home directory. Let us say I am user 1. I logged into a machine and I will be inside my home directory. And we'll see how to log into a machine. Let us say a machine is somewhere else. Machine is in, let's say, Bangalore lab. I'm working from Hyderabad, right? So I need to work on the machine which is in Bangalore data center, and that has Linux operating system. So how do we log into the machine? We need to log into a remote machine, right? There are tools to log in, and once we log in, then let us say I am user 1 and I log into my home directory called /home user 1. Okay. In the same way, /var is for storing the log files, right? So what are log files? So basically, let us say there is an application. Let us just think that there is an application which is running on a Linux machine, right? And so application is generally written by a developer, and we have installed the application on top of the Linux server, and it is running. And there is a problem, right? And there is a problem in the production, and the production team has opened a defect. So there will be different layers like L1, L2, L3, and production team talks to L1 and L2 and L3, and then if they are not able to resolve, it comes to development team, right? So there will be a log file associated with each application, right? So let us say there is a Citibank application running on the server, and there is a problem, and there will be a log file associated. That log file generally will be stored in var, right? So let us say the log file name is application.log. So what is the use of having this application.log? So this is for debugging, right? So basically when you say something is not working, we need to understand what is happening on the machine based on the time, right? So this log file will be something like this. So there will be something like August 15th and morning 9 o'clock within milliseconds. Then there will be something like application XYZ started, right? Then this kind of data will be there in the log file. So basically this log file contains the debugging information. Let us say application crashed, just for example. So this will be easy for the developer to understand what is happening seeing the log file. So when you say there is some problem with my application, immediately he will ask, provide me the log files. Where are the log files? In case of Linux, those log files will be available in /var directory. What is the directory? Directory is nothing but a collection of files. It is something like a folder in Windows. So Linux has a directory structure. Generally we follow the convention. /home is for storing the home directories of the user. /var is for storing the log files, right? So for any application, every application will have its own log file. Let us say you are using tools like Chef, or you are using PET or Ansible. So everything will have its own log file. So let us say, for example, var log ansible.log, right? So if something is going wrong, the next thing what we have to do is debug why it is going wrong. So that we can see in the log file. What is the log file? Log file will have information related to that application based on the timestamp. This is the timestamp, right? In the same way, let us say something is going wrong in the OS itself. OS is very slow, or you're trying to install something is not working. So where do we see? So by default, there is something called var log messages. So this is the file. It contains the OS related debug information. So if something is not not working well, we need to open var-log messages and see. So these are the questions which are like asked in the interview, something like how do you debug if something going wrong. We need to go through the log files. For any application there will be a log file. So if you read the log file, at least something will understand like why it is going wrong. Is something like the storage is full or CPU is full or some prerequisite is not installed. So those kind of things will be available for in the var directory. So var is for storing the log files. So this log files can be for application or it can be for a OS related information as well. If it is OS related information, so basically this paths slightly will change based on the distribution. For RHL maybe it is var-log messages. For SLES it may be something else, but they will be present in var only, maybe var-log, syslog messages. But so based on the distribution the file may change, but basically the directory is same. Var is used to store the log files. Okay. Then etc is for the configuration files. What are the configuration files? Every application needs some configuration, right? So maybe you want to specify the username and the password, or you want to specify the home directory, or you want to specify the port in which the application listens on. So those kind of settings we generally do in etc. So let us say I'm working on Puppet. So etc puppet.conf, just for example. So this is the configuration file for Puppet. Okay, so there we give the information about what is the master, what is the IP of the master, what is the port it is listening on, kind of thing, right? So etc generally we store the configuration files. Okay, temp is for storing the temporary files. Right, the files which are not needed. So generally we copy some of the files to temp, and are as part of writing some script we want to store some status which is not needed after executing the script. So generally we store that in temp files. So some important data if you have, it is not advisable, it's not recommended to store in temp, because sometimes if the machine reboots all the temp files will be deleted. Right, so if you have some information, if you have some data that is you have to use it later part of time, then we have to store it in our home directory. So temp is only for storing the temporary files. Okay, then opt/opt is for storing the third-party software. In the sense we install something in the machine, and let us say any third-party software like Java, or all those things will be stored in opt directory. Okay. Then lib is for storing the library files. Some files which are related to libraries, lib64, 32-bit, 64-bit, all those things will be stored in /lib. Libraries basically needed for the application installation, configuration, execution. Okay, /root is the home directory of the root. So what is root? What is the question? When we default install any software, by default it stores in, yes, by default it stores in opt, but if you want to change, we can change that as well. Okay, so /root is the administrator for Linux, right? So he has the highest privileges, right? So this is called unrestricted access, right? So for Windows, let us say administrator has all the permissions. So if you want to install something, you have to be administrator, right? In the same way, root is the highest of anything. Root is called highest of anything. Root is the administrator for a Linux machine. So for production machines and all, generally will not be given a root permission. So root generally creates the users and he assigns the passwords to different users, and then he gives the permissions to login, right? So he has the highest privileges in the sense for installing a package, for removing a package, for removing some files, anything root can do. Okay, so his home directory is /root. So when root logs into a machine, he will be in /root. Okay, then /bin is for storing the binary files. There are also some other directories. What is that? /dev, right? So when we say we added a device to a Linux machine, it can be an external hard drive or a USB. So that by default shows up in /dev. It appears in /dev. So something like /dev, SDA, SDB. So these are some of the devices which appear when you insert a USB drive or external hard disk to a Linux machine. So these are basically the main directories available. /home is for storing the home directories of the different users. /var is for storing the log files. etc for configuration files. Temp is for temporary files. opt is for third-party software. lib is for library files. Root is the home directory of the user. Bin for binary files. Dev is for storing the devices. So when we add some device to a machine, it shows up in /dev. Let us see how to log into a machine, right? So there is a machine. Just assume that there is a lab in Bangalore and there is a machine running, and that is Linux server, and it has RHEL 7.0 SP3 version, flavor of Linux, and we have been given IP address and the username and the password to log in. So how do we log into this machine? Let us say you are sitting in Hyderabad office and you want to log into the machine which is running in, so basically it's a server, it's a Linux server, and to log in you have been provided an IP address, username and the password, and you have been given a Windows laptop. Now we need to log into that machine from Hyderabad office. So how do we log in? So there are two tools. One is Putty, or there are different tools available, but for now we'll say we have only one tool, that is Putty. So this is to log into remote machine from Windows, right? So how do we log in? So let us say I just go to Google, download Putty. So there is an application called putty.exe. This is basically to log into the remote machines. So here it will be given hostname or the IP address. So this IP address we have to enter here, and then we can use any of these connection types. So primarily we have Telnet and SSH. Okay. So to log into a remote machine, we use a tool called Putty, and there we need to select SSH or Telnet. These are the protocols which we use to log into a remote machine. This is secure shell. This is Telnet. We'll see what is this later and what is the difference, which one to use, which is recommended later. But now Putty is a tool to log into a remote machine, and we have to provide IP address or the host name. Host name is the name of the machine, something like, let us say server1 dot in dot let us say the company name ibm.com. So this is the host name. IP address is something like 9.100.10.10. This is the IP address. IP address means VM. No, IP address is not VM. IP address is to identify a machine. So IP address is unique, right? So you have 100 machines. 100 machines will have different IP address. So VM is different. VM is virtual machine. So in the sense, we'll come to that later, virtualization part. So you have a server, and in the previous days, I mean before 10 years, we used to have only one application running on the server, right? So let us say you have hardware server, then you have operating system on top of that, then you have an application running on it, right? So what is the problem with this approach? In this approach, the CPU and the memory is underutilized. So after few days, they have come up with a concept called virtualization. On top of server, we have a hypervisor, which is basically hypervises the hardware, in the sense virtualizes the hardware. Then on top of single physical server, we can create multiple virtual machines, VM1, VM2, VM3. So each machine can have its own operating system. This can have Linux, this can have Windows, this can have SUSE Linux, Red Hat Linux, etc., etc. So this is basically, here we have only one machine, here we have multiple machines. Here CPU and memory are effectively utilized. Here CPU and memory are underutilized. So that is called VM, virtual machine. We'll come to this later, but for now, to log into a Linux machine which is in remote lab, we need to use a tool called PuTTY. Okay, using PuTTY, we need to select whether we have to use SSH or Telnet, and then we need to provide the IP address. Then it will ask for the username and the password, right? Then we need to enter the username and the password. So once we enter, then we will be inside the Linux machine terminal, right? I'll come to that, the commands and all. So something like, let us say, this is my Linux machine, right? If you do just ifconfig, it will show the IP address. This is the IP address. We'll see this later. For now, let us just see how to log in. See, this will ask security alert. You're logging into a machine. Okay, so just say yes. Do you want to connect? Then it will ask login as. Just say root. Then it will ask the password. Okay, just a minute. I think I have to set the password. Okay, so let us say you have been given this thing, one IP address, and you have given a root and root 1, 2, 3 are the password. Then how do you log in? So we downloaded PuTTY, right? So we downloaded PuTTY, and let us say I want to log in. So I'll just open PuTTY. Then I need to type the IP address here. Then I say SSH. I selected SSH. Then just click on open. So it will ask login as. Then I say root. Then I provide the password. So this is the machine. I'm inside a Linux machine. So generally we log in this way using SSH. So first we need to provide the IP address. Then we need to provide the username and the password, right? Then this is like we entered into a Linux machine and we can execute some command, right? So ls is like list of files. ls is list of files. So something like you open a folder in Windows, you have all the files displayed, right? So in the same way, if you want to see the files in a folder or files in a directory, ls is the command to list files. So here in Linux, each command will have arguments. So ls is a command, right? It will have some arguments. we can pass some different arguments with the ls command. So each will have different behavior. So here ls-l will give in long list format, right? ls will just display the files. ls-l will give in long list, right? So what is this RW, what is this one, what is root, what is this, and what is this? We'll see them later. But now this is like ls-l is like a long list which will give the file names in long list format. So this is the time which it is created or last modified. This is the timestamp. Okay. So let us say the directory structure ls-l. If I give slash, it will give the directory structure. These are the different directories which are available. Some are created, some are by default available, right? So which we spoke about, right? So there are also some other directories. We'll see them later, like MNT and all. Mount point, how to mount a file system to a Linux machine. But some are we have discussed. What is that? Slash home, etc, dev, bin, etc, opt, okay, root, slash user, slash lib, var. Okay, so ls is to display the files. ls-l will display in long list format. So let us say in Windows you have a folder and when you open a folder it will list all the files available, and you just clicked on date modified. So it will show based on the date when it is last modified or date when it is created. So in the same way I want to display that. So ls-lrt or ls-lrt slash. So this will display based on the timestamp in reverse order, right? So this is modified last from bottom to top. So this is modified last and these are modified in the beginning, right? Based on the timestamp in the ascending order, it will give ls- long list reverse timestamp. Okay. So in the same way, there are a lot of commands available. Let us say I want to clear it to clear the screen. If you just type clear, the screen will be cleared. ls is to list, clear is to clear the screen, right? Let us say I want to create a directory. So the basic command is mkdir make directory to create a directory. Like let us say mkdir test. This will create a directory called test. Right? So pwd is the present working directory. See, these commands are also available in Windows as well. If you just go to your command prompt and type cmd, there will be a prompt, right? Command prompt. Here also you can execute the commands, but commands will be different. This is called DOS prompt. dir will give list of files. cwd will give current working directory. Okay, it's not installed. cd is to change the directory, right? So you can go to different directories using cd. In the same way, there are commands in Linux which we use to perform certain job. So mkdir is to create a directory, pw is to check the present working directory, cd is to change directory. So these are some of the basic commands. Let us say cd test will take me to test directory. We'll change the directory to test, right? So let us say I create mkdir test. It will create a directory, and cd test will take me to test directory. Present working directory is /root test. Is the font visible? I think no. Let me close this and open another one. Okay, so pwd is the present working directory. cd is to change directory. Now I am inside root test. Let me create another directory, test1. Okay, now if I go to test1, I'll be inside root test1. So under root we created a directory called test. Under test we created a directory called test1. Now let us say I want to create a path. I want to create something like this. I want to create a directory structure like /a/b/c/d/e. So how do I create like this? Let us say I simply create mkdir, and if I paste this, cannot create directory, no such file or directory. So I need to create /a first, then /b, /d, /c, /this, then /e. So how do we create without creating /a? See, for you have to create /b. First we need to create /a, right? Without creating /a, we cannot create /b. Is there any way directly we can create the complete path?
Yes.
What is that?
With mkdir -p.
Yeah, exactly. So -p will create the entire path. So now if I go to /a, /b, /c, /d, /e, I have the directory. There are no files in the directory, but I can still go to the directory A, B, C, D, E. Where am I now? Under /a, /b, /c, /d, right? So mkdir is to create a directory. Mkdir -p is to create the path. It will create the complete path. Then we have rm. So we can also create the files using touch command. Touch is to just create a dummy file, empty file. So let us say touch 1, 2, 3. So it will create 3 files. When are they created? August 15th, sometime based on the time zone. If you just see date, you can see the timestamp of the machine, right? August 15, 13, 21. So the files are also created on August 15, 13, 21. The file name is 123. Now let us say I want to remove the file rm1. Do you want to remove the file? It will ask. If you say yes, it will remove the file. So the file 1 is deleted. So here rm is to delete the file, delete or remove the file, right? Or let us say you want to delete a directory. rmdir is to delete a directory. Okay, and you want to remove, let us say there are contents in the directory. rmdir, you can delete only if the directory is empty, or if you want to delete all the files forcibly, recursively, in the sense, let us say you have /a, /b, /c, /d, and in each of the directory you have files. In /b there are files, /c there are files, /d there are files, and I am at highest point. Now I want to delete uh, all the directories from /a. So if I give rm-rf/a, everything will be deleted. So this R is recursive, F is force. So this will remove all the files recursively, forcibly. So this is called the most dangerous command of Linux. So it's like if you delete a file, there is nothing like a recycle bin in Linux. That file is gone. You cannot get back once you delete a file. So I mean, you have to be a little cautious while executing this command, especially rm-rf/ something that will be permanently deleted without asking the confirmation. If you just do rm-rf/, that's all, machine will be screwed up and you cannot get back. You have to reinstall. Okay, this is the most dangerous or cautious command. You have to be cautious while executing this command because rm is remove, r is recursively, f is forcibly. So it will remove everything starting from /. So the OS will be corrupted if you execute directly on this command. Backup means we can copy the files. Copy is the command to copy a file. Let us say file 123. So this will create another file called file123 with the same contents of file. So that way you can take the backup, but there is nothing like or there are some these things you can use to take the backup. There are something called tar command. We'll see them little advanced commands later part, but today we'll see the basic stuff. Okay, so let us say I created a file. There are 2 files, 2, 3. Let me add some this thing. We have not yet seen VI, so don't worry about VI. So cat is the command to list out the contents of a file. So if you just cat and give file name, it will list the content, right? So let us say I'll give copy 2. So I'll give file 123. So this 2 file has to be copied to file 123. So there will be a new file created, file 123 out of 2, and this file has the hello world content. So file 2 is copied to file 123, right? So see, PWD is to check the present working directory, and I want to go one level up, one level previous directory. CD ... will take me to one level up. So I'll be inside D, ABCD. Now if I again do CD ... I'll be inside C. Right? CD ... is to take one level up. Okay. Now CD, now if I do ls, this is the list of, so I mean it's like same like Windows. You have a folder, you have different folder structure, you go one by one, and if you want to go back, you just press backspace, it takes one directory level up, right? So in the same way, CD ... will take one level up. Okay. Now if I want to go to B again, CDB, ls, CDC, ls, CDD. Now my present working directory is /a/b/c/d. Okay. Is this clear? These are the basic commands. There are a lot of other commands. We'll see them tomorrow. So it's like regularly if you want to use some Linux machine, you have to be comfortable with all these commands. So if you want to log into your remote machine, you should have Putty installed on the machine. Just download Putty, and if you have a machine which is running on a remote lab, yeah, we have. I'll send this. It has the commands. It has some basic commands. So we'll see how to transfer a file, permissions, how to change the permissions of a user and all that stuff. So these are the basic commands. We'll see them. So for tomorrow, how do we install remote machine? So for that, we need to have access to console. We need to download the ISO. We need to boot the machine with that ISO. We'll see that later. But this is something like a basics class. Just how to log into a machine and how to execute some commands. Okay. So I'll give you a small exercise for tomorrow. So I'll be explaining about these steps tomorrow. Just try to follow these steps. So if you have a Windows laptop and you have an internet connection, download Git, download Oracle VirtualBox, download Vagrant, and install. Okay, so either it will be .exe for Windows. So you just download these things. These are all open source software. You can find them on net. Just Google and then install all these 3 things on your machine. Okay, so this is to create a lab inside the machine. So this will create a virtual machine inside your laptop itself, so that you can practice all the commands on your laptop only, right? See, I'm using this. This is actually Git Bash. So this is the machine which is running on top of my Windows. This is not a remote machine, right? So you have your hardware, which is your Windows laptop. Then you can create a VM on top of your machine itself, right? And this you can have any OS, Ubuntu, Linux, or Red Hat. So actually this is Oracle VirtualBox is a hypervisor. Yeah, anything is fine. Windows, Linux, Mac, or anything. This will be open source software available for all the hardware, all the OSs. You can just download and use it. Just download Git and install, download Oracle VirtualBox and install, and in the same way download Vagrant and install. We'll see how to use them in tomorrow's class. This is creating lab inside your laptop only, so that you can practice all these Linux commands. Okay, so just make a note of these 3 points and try to complete this before the class. I mean, this is just like downloading and installing.
Yeah, like as part of Linux, are going to cover any like application server?
Yeah, we will be covering the Tomcat server installation.
Yeah, any like any database access, any database connections like that?
No. Data, we'll be configuring MySQL as part of Puppet or Chef, but
Okay.
it's not like queries and all will not see. It's only configure administer database.
Okay.
Okay. Basically, we use some script to configure MySQL on a Linux machine, and we'll try to connect to it. That's all. I mean, it's not like a SQL queries and all will not see.
Okay.
So today we just covered the Linux basics commands. So they will be helpful every day when you start working on Linux. So further you need to get comfortable with Linux. So you need to do all these things to get the lab inside your laptop. Okay. Download Git, make a note of these things. Download Git, download Oracle VirtualBox, download Vagrant. I'll show you how to use them, how to create the environment tomorrow. It's very easy, just 3 steps.